We work well with the power dynamics, and I think the reason that happens is because we don't run away from them. They're acknowledged within the groups. Trainees, as well as the staff, have been very open to hearing about any challenges that one might feel or any pressure that any of the trainees may feel. But also, there's this wonderful willingness to be vulnerable, and that's for both trainees and staff. And therefore, if there are difficulties or problems individually, they can be addressed.
I think there are extra challenges. You want to, supervisory relationships are professional. Of course, as a clinician, there are parts of ourselves that are inherently part of the work that gets talked about and activated in the supervision. When you're in a SERT group, it kind of amplifies that dynamic that we have to, I think, consciously, actively, directly talk about.
As you can imagine, in a clinic like this, it's going to be pretty inevitable that there's going to be varying levels of training and positions in a SERT group. And so I've sat with supervisors of mine in these settings, and quite frankly, I think one of the best things that has happened is naming that and learning to interact with that. And that can actually be one of the differences in the room in a certain way that gets, call it, negotiated or discussed. And I think one of the positives that comes with that is I've learned to share things in that setting with supervisors that I might not have shared with them, and as that safety grew in the context of the group. I now have supervisors who have shared parts of my narrative, and I've really come to value that. And so for me, it's been a positive experience, although something that is present and needs to kind of be acknowledged.
The SERT groups worked with power dynamics in explicit and implicit ways throughout the year. I believe it was explicitly named in the beginning of the group when introductions were happening and getting to know different people's roles in the clinic. And over the year, I'd say there were moments where power dynamics might play out implicitly in the group, and there was a point where a supervisor opened up the space to discuss the dynamics more explicitly so that we could talk about it and look into that dynamic more clearly.
The key thing is for the staff to be aware of that, to talk about it when it needs to be talked about, but even more than talking about it, I think they need to show certain things. I think they need to be willing to go first in terms of being vulnerable. I think they need to pay attention to the process and be willing to make interventions if someone's getting silenced or overlooked or something like that. I think staff also have to help each other, because if one staff member acts out their power in a certain way, maybe another person in the group can notice it, and they can talk about it between groups and make an adjustment or a follow-up. So from my perspective, if the staff are paying attention, that's the key.
One of the ways that we resolved issues is by having the space open and available to discuss different power dynamics.
There's an opportunity, therefore, for the staff as well as the trainees to find ways to communicate, for the staff members to model vulnerability in terms of professionalism, to also model transparency. And I think those are important characteristics for senior staff to model for trainees.